We are living in some very, very significant times in terms of dealing with people in the workplace and interacting with our patients. Because for the first time ever, we have 5 separate generations working together and also coming to us as our patients. We have the veterans, or the matures as they are called. We have baby boomers. How many here are baby boomers? Okay, we'll talk about a little bit more about characteristics in a minute. Do we have any Gen Xers here today? Maybe you don't know which generation you belong to yet, but Gen Xers are obviously the baby boomers' children. And the children of the Gen Xers are the Gen Y folks, or the millennials, as they're sometimes called. And now our newest generation coming up are the Gen Z people. And so what I don't know is, then do we start at the beginning of the alphabet and keep going? But many of us might not be there to see what happens next. But let's talk a little bit about some of the characteristics briefly of these generations. The veterans, or the matures, or the traditionals are those folks that were born between 1922 and 1945. And they are the folks who are the World War II veterans. That's probably the most impactful part for the men of that particular generation. And we'll talk a little bit about their work characteristics in a minute. Baby boomers, largest generation ever, born between 1946 and 1964. So we're now seeing the first generation of these, or the first of the baby boomers, starting to turn 60 and retire. And so for those of us in the baby boom generation, we hope that all you Gen Xers and Gen Yers are going to keep working, keep paying into Social Security, because we sort of would like to collect some Social Security as we begin to retire. Now we have the Gen Xers, who have come after the baby boomers. They are born in 1965 through 1980. That's probably lots of you here in this room. And you folks are the ones that decided, after you watched your workaholic parents not have much of a life, that you wanted to go out and have a little bit of fun, but sometimes fun to the extreme. Gen Y, or the millennials, named because they sort of came into their own around the turn of the 21st century, born in 1981 through about the year 2000. And this is, again, the children of the baby boomers. And again, we saw lots of changes for these folks, where the baby boomers believed that work was everything that you did. The Gen X and the Gen Y generations have adopted a philosophy of you work so that you can support your lifestyle. And maybe that's not such a bad philosophy. And now we have the next generation, the Gen Zs, or some people call the digital natives, because they will not know anything in their life before computers. So the joke always is, especially for the baby boomers and the traditional folks, if you don't know how to use your computer, ask a kid, ask somebody 10 years old or younger. Anybody had that experience? Absolutely. I refuse to play Wii against my 7-year-old great nephew, who's like my grandson, because he can beat the pants off me, because he has no fear of it. He's just always known that, has grown up with it, where for me it's like, oh man, am I going to look silly when I'm swinging the baseball bat or whatever it is. Now, to bring this sort of together is, what are the work characteristics that come with these generational values that people have? For the traditional folks, work was an obligation. And basically in that generation, you worked until you died, and you usually stayed in the same job. These were the people who got the gold watches for 50 years of work, and they stayed in the same employment, good or bad, for their entire life or entire careers. It's interesting now to see people change jobs all the time. That makes the grandparents' generation sort of crazy. How can you do that? How come you can't stay there in that one place? The baby boomers looked at work as a career and an adventure. So maybe we start in one place, but we're going to go somewhere else. We may change jobs a couple of times in our career, or maybe try a second career. And whether it's because we've been laid off from a job that we were in long term and had to go and find work elsewhere, that's where the baby boomers have sort of blossomed, and they looked at work as more of an adventure, but they also dedicated their lives. These were and are still the workaholics. The Gen Xers had sort of a difficult time because they look at work as a challenge. It's sort of a means to an end. It's just a job for them. It's a way to get what they need to buy the car, buy the boat, take the vacations, and enjoy spring break. It's, if you talk to some of the folks in the Gen X or the Gen Y generations, they're still in the let's go on spring break mentality, that they're so used to that being in school, being in college. And that sort of ties into the whole philosophy of education. Traditional folks viewed education, college education, as something for the rich, for the privileged, because many of them didn't even finish high school. The baby boomer generations looked at college as, again, the means to the end. That's how I begin my career. The Gen X and the Gen Y folks believe that college is a right. Everybody has a right to that education, and everybody's getting it. The challenge for them now, of course, is that they invest all this time and money in education, and it's difficult to find a job. We're not sure yet what's going to happen with the Gen Y folks. What they're seeing is people being laid off. They're being challenged by the poor economy right now. And we're not really sure, because they're not really in the workforce yet, how they're going to react, what their work ethic is going to be like. But if you've got a diverse workplace, if you have a whole bunch of generations mixed in together in your practice, you know that there tends to sometimes be conflict. That some of the baby boomer folks will stay way past working time, they'll finish the task, they'll get everything done, and they won't leave it till everything's done. But the Gen X and the Gen Y people are looking there at their watch saying, oh, wait a minute, I need to get out of here. I've got XYZ things I need to do. I either need to meet my friends at the bar, or maybe I have family obligations that I need to take care of. I need to get the kids to soccer and so forth. But if we've got now a traditional employer, somebody who is closer to retirement, they just don't understand, wait a minute, we have work to do and we're not going home until we get that work done.